So we're at the point now with Doctor Who animations where it's a bit up in the air as to what the future is going to be. We don't know whether they're even going to continue with these missing episode animations at all. Since my video on the Abominable Snowmen, we have come to learn that Disney Plus is the new kind of location for international viewing of Doctor Who, which is amazing. That is such a great thing for the future of Doctor Who to have. But along with this, BBC America no longer will be broadcasting Doctor Who. So for those who don't know, BBC America were the people who were essentially funding these missing episode animations ever since Power of the Daleks, the original one in 2016. So despite BBC America not funding these animations anymore or even broadcasting Doctor Who for American audiences, we now at least have a vague reason why they're no longer funding these. It's not due to them not performing very well, because we know that they do perform really well in kind of DVD and Blu-ray sales overall. I have a pretty strong feeling this won't happen. Maybe Disney Plus will pick up the mantle in the funding. I mean, it's not that they don't have the money, it's whether they're actually interested in doing this. I don't even know if Disney are aware of these animations. They would probably need someone going up to them and being like, these are things that we've done, they've been really successful, and then they'd have to consider from then on in. But let's forget about that for now. What I want to do is I want to look back. I want to look back at all the animations that we've gotten, and I want to think how lucky we are to have even got these animations in the first place. So what better way than to do a tier list, of course, on the animated episodes, the animated releases of Doctor Who, the missing episode releases anyway. This tier list will actually be in the description and probably the top comment as well. So please head on over to the tier list and do your own ranking and send it to me over on Twitter at SamThomasYT. So we might as well go straight to the start with the story that essentially started my channel. The 2006 production from Cosgrove Hall, the pioneers of the Doctor Who animation, and it is so good. It's surprisingly good. It's weird how good it is. This animation had so much riding on it. They didn't know Cosgrove Hall at the time that it had so much riding on it, and they took this cel-shaded, really aesthetic approach to these two missing episodes, and it fits so well. I think a really good indication as to whether an animation was worth it or succeeded was how well it blends with the other missing episodes, if there are any. And I think this is perfect for that. So the grading system essentially goes from S to X. It starts with to be heralded for years to come, not too shabby, a good attempt, could do with some work, maintain a considerable distance please, keep it far from me or haven't seen. Now I obviously do essentially have a bit of a bias with this one. This was actually also the first animation that I saw, because for most of my life my Doctor Who DVDs came from my dad, and I was only 3 years old when this animation was released, so it wasn't really my thing to be collecting my Doctor Who DVDs and Blu-rays. But it was this and another one later, which were the only two that I actually had in my collection, and all of this adds up to what I would say it should go in the not too shabby column, in my opinion. It's not perfect by any means, but I think even if you remove the actual animation, the impact that it had and the respect that I have for it is insane. So next up, we have the Reign of Terror, the pain of terror. When I was doing my animation series, most of these animations were first time viewings, and most of these stories were first time viewings because I simply didn't have them in my collection. And so for this one to be the second video that I had to make in this series, it kind of made me reconsider doing the rest of them. But it's difficult to say why. It's not difficult to say why at all. It looks terrible. The animation is a bit janky. I mean, full respect for Planet 55. I mean, they go on here to do some of the best work that we've got here, but their first attempt, this jankily animated kind of feature that doesn't blend well with the rest of the episodes, it just really doesn't do it for me, and I don't think it does it for a lot of other people. I mean, it's been memed upon. It's just, the editing is just all over the place, and it really, I don't know what happened behind the scenes here, but I think it could have been so much better. It could have been on par with the Invasion, but unfortunately that's not the case, and I'm gonna have to put it at, I mean, I want to put it in here, but I think it would genuinely be doing it too much of a service, so I've got to put it in here, especially because I need to fill out some of these later on. So next is the Ice Warriors, which is definitely, maybe it's the most underrated animation on this list. I genuinely don't understand why it's not talked about more often. Maybe it's just the story itself, but this story, this animation, I mean, has so much going for it. I think the animation from Curious Entertainment, definitely so much better than Planet 55's, and it feels really smooth. The movements of the characters in this are so much better than even the Invasion, and I think it's really just overlooked at times. People just kind of forget it. They're like, oh, the Invasion, and then the Reign of Terror, and then the Moonbase and the 10th Planet, but they forget about the Ice Warriors. And the Ice Warriors was the other DVD in my collection that was animated along with the Invasion, and obviously that means I must have a bit of a bias towards it, but it really is that good. And I think most people maybe would put it around here, or I think if you actually watch it again, you might put it in a good attempt, but I'm going to put it up here with Not Too Shabby with the Invasion, because I really think it doesn't get the respect that it deserves. Please let me know whether you agree with me. I mean, there's got to be one person who agrees with me in the comments. The 10th Planet and the Moonbase are often lumped together. They are both Planet 55 productions, and they were essentially done during the same time period, but the Moonbase always comes out on top, and that's really interesting to me because I don't think the Moonbase is as good as people give it credit for. I think the 10th Planet is just that little bit above the Moonbase, and maybe it's because it was only one episode animated, but maybe it's because it was a more artistically kind of driven production. It just looks that kind of more creative. It somehow does exactly what I love in an animation. It blends both the live action and the animation together really well, while also looking really unique and creative. For that point, I'm going to have to put the 10th Planet at to be heralded for years to come, because I genuinely think that the 10th Planet is, in the black and white kind of era of animations we have, it's the best one. And I think the Moonbase, and this shouldn't really make any sense, but I genuinely think the Moonbase is going to have to go in a good attempt, because there's something about it. There is something about it that I can't pinpoint, but for some reason, it just doesn't work for me. I know I'm going to get lots of people fighting me on this in the comments, but that's just how I feel anyway. Please do send me your tier list if you do want. So next up is the Power of the Daleks 2016 edition. This was the first BBC America stab in the dark, essentially. It was a fair attempt, and it wasn't the fault of the people doing it, Charles Norton and all those people doing it. They didn't have the time or the money, I guess, necessary to do this full-scale 6-episode animation. It was so much of an ask from the people behind the scenes, and to be fair, it's miles better than anything I could have done, and miles better than anything most of us could do. So I think we really have to respect this animation. It's insane how we got this animation, right? And they even decided to do any more. But unfortunately, it's gonna have to go lower down on the list. I think personally, for me, it's gonna have to be in Maintain a Considerable Distance, Please. There's so many problems with this animation. I mean, this is the one animation on this list where anyone could watch this and anyone could see what went wrong. Loads of little keyframe errors and animation errors and corners being cut to save on time and money. So unfortunately, this one just has to go lower down on the list, but we will get to come back to this story in a bit. Next up is Shada, not necessarily a missing episode per se, but I still did a video on it. So in my kind of rules, it is going to be on this list. So Shada is when Big Finish, who I think did this one, essentially perfected the 3D-ness of these projects, because there is one shot from the start of this story of the guy, I forget his name, on his bike, and I think it's actually phenomenal. I don't use that word very often, but I do think so. But this is a really strong animation. I mean, I think there are parts where it could do some work. I mean, I don't think you really get the impact of the villain. Like, they don't really seem very menacing in a sense. So I think it definitely could do with some work, but it's also a really good attempt. So I'm really stumped as to which one I should put it in here. I think upon reflection, I am going to throw it in a good attempt because I just have so much respect for the animators and directors and producers that get put on these animations, because they make so much with so little, and that is more than we could ever ask of them, really. So next up is the Macra Terror. Now this is a jump in quality. The shading and the shadows and the dynamic range and the colours look so good. Obviously, Shada was actually the first one in colour, I forgot to mention, but I don't know what it was with this one. Maybe they had more time, or maybe just a little bit more moolah, but the colours in this one and the way it looks works so well. The problem that we get now with a lot of these animations though is how well they blend with the other episodes, or the surviving episodes I should say, or even just the surviving clips. But I'm sure, to no one's surprise, this is going straight up in the to be heralded for years to come part of the list, because it's phenomenal. Again, I'm using that word again, but it really did bring something new to the animations. It brought so much new life into the Doctor Who animations, and I have so much respect for this animation and everyone who worked on it. I don't think I could have asked for anything better. Unfortunately though, obviously for the people who do like it to blend seamlessly, or not seamlessly, but I really respect that they put a black and white version onto the releases. It allows people who aren't me to watch these animations as close as possible to the surviving segments. But with this one, you really get it. With the really big Macra model and whatever, you really get that it doesn't work as well with the 60s Macra physical models. So next up is the Faceless Ones, which again is much like the Ice Warriors, is not spoken about that much, but to be fair, I'll give it to them for this one. It's a bit off in some places, and I think it's the facial animation. The faces on some of these characters just don't feel real a lot of the time. The Macra Terror faces were really expressive and alive, whereas the faces in the Faceless Ones animation just feel a bit dirty. I think a lot of people would agree with me on the could do with some work column, but it is not terrible. Like, it is still got that Macra Terror flair, so it's not like difficult to watch in any way. Okay, so we've got another infamous one. We've got Fury from the Deep. A delve into a 2.5D kind of stab at Doctor Who animation, and I really think people give it too much hate. I think for what it is, I mean, even with the long arms and all, it's really good. The colours in this one, I think, are really good. I think they absolutely got it so well on the kind of the drab beachfront and stuff like that. I mean, I just remember now the fucking TARDIS at the start and the end that's just going up, and that's so bad. But despite that, I think this animation does the story really well. I think it really captures the atmosphere of Fury from the Deep, and for that I really respect it, and I think a lot of you should also do that as well. I don't think I could say it's better than Shada or the Moonbase. I don't think I could say it's on par with Shada or the Moonbase. So I think I'm going to put it again with the Faceless Ones in could do with some work. Because despite me liking it so much, it's still got, got those corners being cut once more. Okay, now moving on to the Power of the Daleks Special Edition. A far cry from what was in the 2016 edition. An insane boost in quality from the 2016 edition. I mean, don't get me wrong, they did have previous work and all the stuff that they did in the 2016 edition to do for the special edition. I can assume that they probably had less time to do it in because they had other stuff, but it's a massive, massive overhaul of what they did, and I love it so. I'm so glad that they got this chance to redo this amazing story, because it is genuinely one of my favorite Troughton stories, and I'm so glad it got the respect that it deserves in this new version. It still cuts corners. I mean, I'm saying that so often, but every single one of these stories cuts corners. They have to, because this is BBC Funds we're talking about. But obviously, if you throw the 2016 DVD and this new story side by side, you can see a massive jump in quality, and I'm glad that hopefully they learned from these other stories as well, and the success of the Macra Terror and whatever, and they knew exactly what to bring into it, so the shadows and the lighting looks so much better, which is what they excel at in a lot of these stories. I'm gonna have to throw it in not too shabby. I think I'm so glad that they got the chance to redo this story, so maybe they'll redo some of these other stories, hopefully the Reign of Terror, again in the future. Another infamous animated story, The Web of Fear. Shapeshifter Studios' attempt at 3D modeling and animation, you can go check out my most recent video on the Abominable Snowmen animation, where I think I spoke a little bit about Shapeshifter Studios and how it wasn't actually their first delve into Doctor Who animation. But yeah, the Web of Fear, it's a tricky one. It's not a tricky one. It's a terrible animation. And that is so mean for me to say. I'm never usually that bad. But they tried to do something, and I can see where they were going, but it really does like look like terrible kind of PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, 3D game characters. It really saddens me because it could have been the future, and maybe it will be if they develop this technology further, this cheap technology that they're using. But I do really respect it, and it does annoy me when people get so like worked up about it and so annoyed at it, but it isn't great, is it? We can all agree on that. I mean, I don't know if you'll find a person who thinks it's good, so I think most people will agree that it will go in the keep it far from me column. If anyone gets to put it in this column, maybe watch the reconstruction instead, because that has some better animation and modeling than the actual marketed version. Anyway, moving along from the big sore patch, whatever that means, of the Web of Fear to the Evil of the Daleks. Now this, again, is considered by many to be the best Doctor Who animation. The Macra Terror had that crown, but now it's probably the Evil of the Daleks for most people, and I can see why. I think personally, the Macra Terror does it just that little bit better. Whether I should put it in Not Too Shabby or To Be Heralded for Years to Come, I'm not too sure yet, but I think the colours, and maybe it's just the story, because I really do like the story of the Macra Terror over the Evil of the Daleks a little bit anyway, but for me the Macra Terror just feels that much more grand and beautiful, I guess, as a way of putting it. And I'm not saying that Evil of the Daleks isn't that, it's exactly like that as well, but you know, when things are so similar, sometimes you just have to pick one, and for me it's the Macra Terror. Realistically, there is no reason for me to put it in the Not Too Shabby. Like, it isn't on par with some of these animations. I think it is much better than that, so it's definitely going to have to be in To Be Heralded for Years to Come. Okay, final two now, and we're starting with Galaxy 4. Another Fury from the Deep-esque animation. It's similar in vein to that, and so is the next one as well, because obviously it's the same animation company, that being Big Finish. But Galaxy 4, I think, same with a lot of people, doesn't really do it for them. There's some of the sets just don't look right. Some of the outside kind of landscapes don't feel right. Some of the animations are a little bit janky. The textures are like hyper real in places, and that's not terrible in in Fury from the Deep. That's how they did it as well, but it just doesn't really work for this story. It kind of falls on its face for this one, and it's an odd story to be animated, but obviously I'm definitely really glad that they did another First Doctor story anyway. Despite that, I think I'm gonna have to throw it in Maintain a Considerable Distance, please. I do struggle to watch this one. I think it's just a combination of all those little gripes and nitpicks that make it really difficult for me to watch it. Although, looking at this now, like, can I really put it alongside the Power of the Daleks 2016 animation? No, I don't think I can. So I will throw it up here with Fury from the Deep, because realistically they're not too dissimilar, but I think Fury from the Deep gets too much hate, if anything. Maybe I should put another one between B and C and throw Fury from the Deep in there, because that's where I think it should go, I think. Anyway, we finish off now with the final, maybe the last Doctor Who animation officially produced for years to come now. Hopefully not, hopefully someone will pick it up again, but the Abominable Snowmen, it's a good one. It is really good, and it was a solid final outing for the Doctor Who animations, and I think they really perfected the 2D kind of work here. I think it's really good. Some of the animations a little bit janky, but I mean, I'm saying all these things like I know how to do it, or like I know what a good one would look, and for all I know, this is as good as it's going to get in terms of this kind of movement and stuff like that. So maybe I'm just talking about out my arse, and maybe I'm asking for too much. I don't think I am. I really don't think I am. But this was a fantastic job, and I really I think it deserves the a good attempt column. I mean, B is still really good. I mean, the wording on some of these rows maybe aren't amazing, but if you just look at S, A, B, C, D, E, C is still really good. I was happy to get a C in geography for my A levels, and it got me to university, so C is really good. D and E is where you want to stay far from, but it's not to say there isn't merit in all of these animations. I'm so glad that we've got these animations of missing Doctor Who episodes. I mean, the fact that we can easily access and watch these new creations and new ways of bringing out our favourite episodes of Doctor Who and on some of our lost stories and beloved stories of Doctor Who. It's so amazing that our favourite show can have this kind of love and attention that a lot of these other shows don't get, especially a lot of shows that did get junked in the 60s and stuff like that. I am in no doubt that we will get some form of revitalisation of missing Doctor Who episodes in the future.